call the roll.
Carl Hayes,
Here.
Dave M. Spoker, Scott Brackett,
Here.
Charles Burles,
Here.
Mike Finnegan,
Here.
Tim Gerlich,
Here.
John Stutzman,
Here.
and we have a quorum. I just want to remind everyone before we start to punch your buttons
Yes,
here. Thank you.
you have to have the green
When you
light on.
speak.
And okay, you got a package of minutes from the last meeting. We have any revisions, additions, corrections? No? Got a motion?
Make a motion to accept last month's minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
One abstained since I was not at that meeting.
Okay. Those wishing to address the Airport Advisory Commission need not request permission in advance. Action taken as a result of public comments will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter for consideration of decision at a later time pursuant to ARS 38-431. Okay, we have our first report, and we'll move the website up to include that with the business park staff report, so Bennett can move on to figure better things.
Shocking there. Is this on? Yeah. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So I'd like to start out by talking about the grant again. We've mentioned this many times over the last months. On June 21st, the Arizona Commerce Authority received the correspondence from the Arizona Department of Transportation advising us that the ACA's recommendations for the ESP grant was awarded. If you recall, our submission was for the reconstruction of Port Road, approximately 0.23 miles, Government Road, 0.35 miles, and Transport Road, approximately 0.35 miles. So we're waiting to be contacted by a representative of ADOT to advise us of what our next steps will be. This will include executing a grant agreement, at which time the grant award will become official. Update you a little bit on the land sale. We are currently working on another land sale. Appraisal's been done. Appraisal price per acre is $48,000. The potential purchaser is willing to move forward with the sale, so staff will be setting up a notice of sale and auction. All processes we hope to have finalized in August. We're working on, well, let me update you on rail.
New business or expansion like the other one?
This will be a new business of a company in regards to what they're gonna do. So, rail. So rail's been, in May, so we're typically a month behind when we get our reports from Patriot Rail. We serviced 133 rail cars in May, and they stored 386 cars out at the industrial park. In regards to some right-of-way improvements, I don't know if you've noticed, but we've got a larger mower that we can use outside of in the industrial park, and we've been using that along Mojave Airport Drive, coming up through and getting some grass and weeds cut down along the side of the right-of-ways and off on Commerce as well. We started, so we'll continue to do that and move that forward. In regards to marketing, industrial, and aviation businesses, we're working with the city management on a community video project. I've submitted over 20 industrial and some aviation businesses that were interested. I reached out to everyone, and so the video will consist of various videos which will show healthcare, education, real estate, recreation, quality of life, and of course the airport and industrial park. It'll just show all the great things the city has here in the community. So we've had over 20 businesses that expressed interest in that. There's a marketing component to that, and a where the business is marketing on the video. In regards to additional businesses, we've met with another local businesses above and beyond the one I'm working on. They did show some interest. Would be an expansion of an existing business on some land at the airport, actually on the industrial park side. We've also submitted on a project called Project Wagon Wheel. This is an average salary about $46,800. 90% of the jobs will be manufacturing, 10% administration. They're looking for a 325,000. Well, they're looking to build a 325,000 square foot manufacturing facility, 100,000 square foot of assembly, and 6,500 square foot of office space. They're looking for around 65 acres. They'll do a build-to-suit. Typically how that works, we get the projects in and we'll package up the land, submit for that. So they're in the site selection process. It is a process. If we get to the next step, then there will be additional information that they will require from us. We've also met with Big Industrial. Big Industrial is one of our largest industrial business building owners out at the park. They are currently working with a company by the name of Meyer Distribution. When I was with the county, I worked to bring Meyer to Mojave County. They have purchased land to build a distribution center, but they're doing some temporary distribution in current facilities out at the industrial park. And so they're working with Big Industrial on that. There's a building over at the, I guess I would call it the old Southwire facility that they own. It had a roof. They're going to be putting sides on it. That'll give them another 16,000 square foot. Space is very limited out at the industrial park, as you all know. That's going to kind of lead me into, there's a building that is being purchased by another group called Bulk Industrial own the other properties. Big Industrial separated out from them. Big Industrial is buying this other building. This is the old NAF building, which was the Guardian Fiberglass building. So this building is about 620,000 square foot. It had basically been mothballed. They were doing some distribution of insulation out of it, out of the back end of the building, small employment numbers. They did put that property up on the market, and Big Industrial is the purchaser of the property. They're already marketing the property, and I don't believe it's going to take too long before that property gets occupied. There's some work that needs to be done on the manufacturing side. They've got to get the furnaces out. There's a lot of work on that side, but there's a lot of storage capacity, and a lot of our existing businesses need that capacity right now. So I think we're going to see a lot of existing businesses float into that space as well and start occupying it for distribution.
I don't know if you've seen it, but Shell's has got some big extrusion equipment going in again.
Yes, we were working with them. They're adding a couple more lines. They cut a lot of the concrete out so they could set those, that equipment on that. So that's basically my update on the industrial park side.
Yes, what does Big Industrial do?
They own and lease buildings.
They have a Southwire building where the ABS pipe is, they own that whole big lot. They're working on tenants for that too, aren't they?
Yeah, so
But there's people going into the Guardian Fiberglass?
so there's two companies, and they got similar names. Bulk Industries originally was Big Industrial. They split off. And they became Bulk Industrial. They took the majority of the Kingman owned properties. The other group owned property throughout the U.S. They're getting back into the Kingman market. So they kept the name Big Industrial, and they're the ones purchasing the old Guardian building.
So you don't actually have a customer who wants to move in there?
Well, I don't have somebody, but I've talked with them, and they've got interest from businesses looking to use it to distribute. Yep. Yes, so that's it on that, and then, if we could move the website, if Tim wants to give an update, and then I can, kind of allude to some of the stuff that we've got going on after that.
Okay, I'd probably, sorry. It may be best for you to go ahead and, when you're ready to give us an update on.
Okay, I'll
what
do
you
that
have.
right now then. So, we've gone through the RFP process. Staff has looked at, various providers. We are finalizing that selection process. Once that's been completed, then we'll move forward with the consulting phase of the project. So the consulting phase will consist of layout and wireframe selection. So the company, the website developer, will work with us on compiling, or they'll work with those different options and they'll provide them to us. We'll also look at collecting logos and images, which will be used for the website, and we'll be submitting those to them during this process. There's a discovery process, in which case they will send out a survey, and we'll fill that survey out. I see the committee also working on that as part of that process. I also see the committee working with us at various meetings as we go through that. The site content preparation and content strategy is part of that process, and we will work with the committee and with the web developer on that. In the end, they'll do a deliverable summary, which the company will provide us a more structured list of delivery dates that are, discussed in the call. So delivery dates are, eventually they go live. There's a process. There's 2 or 3 steps before that with all these other things that we're going to be doing. So, like I said, I see you guys as being on that, 1 or 2 of you, whoever's on that committee, being part of those calls when we set those up with the company.
Okay.
Bennett, are you the point guy for the
Yes.
air side and the industrial park for this website?
Yeah, I would be the point
Okay.
guy for the website.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not sure how this works with my agenda item tying into Bennett, but that's very valuable information that you're
And
sharing
then-
with that right now.
And then any of your committee meetings that you might set up, I'd be part of that. And I really think, like, once we get to we select the company and we do the initial call with them, I would imagine you'd be on that call.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
Good.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Bennett. Okay, airport staff report. You gonna be there the rest of the day?
Good morning. I'm going to apologize up front, given the holiday and everything that was going on in the week before. My report is going to be similar to last month's, short and sweet, which for me is, for you is probably good, for me is not normal. Aircraft numbers out at the airport. I think the last time I mentioned 186 stored aircraft. I believe it's 197 per report I got this morning. We did have 1 shade port that was open. That's been filled. Vacant hangars at present, 5, believe it or not. The fuel flowage numbers for May and June, I do not have. The dynamic there basically was with the formation of the budget and all the year-end process we were going through, it didn't come off. So this next report, you'll have update for May and June. Same thing with the airport revenue numbers. And again, you'll have an update, hopefully final numbers for this past year, and then new numbers for the beginning of this fiscal year, which started in July.
Excuse me. Could you read you said something about the hangar vacancy, and
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't hear it.
Certainly. Right now, we have 5 vacant hangars.
Is that shade hangars or T hangars?
No, shades are full.
Okay.
that's T's.
So it's T's.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we did have one shade port that was open, but that went away with the blink of an eye, which is no great surprise. The FAA master plan's in progress. Staff is going to be reviewing a report via that group. It has to do with the environment and the Corps of Engineers. Once that's approved, that'll move forward. And again, I think I mentioned this the last time out, we had our second master plan meeting, the Public Advisory Committee and the Public Info Workshop. Both were very successful, and we've gotten compliments back from the consultants in regards to the city engagement, your engagement, the public. Master plan projects at airports typically are not this energized, and this was very positive and a lot of great energy. Taxiway Bravo, the design project, we have that in for 2020. That has not changed. We also anticipate completing the master plan this year, if not early next. Probably early next, 2020. The ACIP meeting went very well with the FAA. The chair will probably comment on that, but again, we got compliments through FAA, compliments through the consultants in regards to the fact that FAA was very interested, very engaged. I won't say it's a sleep fest at a number of these meetings, but typically that kind of engagement is rare. There were lots of questions. There was information shared with us that we didn't know about. It was very positive. And right now, the projects that we're looking at, top 3 on the list, runway 321, and I've been discussing with management the fact that we need to start moving on that, which will put us at a higher rating of possibly getting 100% funding. If that doesn't come off, then it puts us in a higher rating by next May or June or April of doing a 95% grant. So either way, it's a little money up front, but it's a good thing. The next project, again, is designed for Taxiway Bravo, and then a new project is adding in a drainage master plan for the entire airfield portion of the airport. The Dross site will begin mid-July, coring again through late August. Depending on what they find, it could stretch out, and I don't mean this group. They would come back and then focus on some other sites within that area, depending on what they come up with. But they'll be back out there. Cassie's aware. They know where the drilling dates are for different areas. I'll be contacting them, and if we need to move things around, we'll do that. The terminal remodel's underway. We're into week 7. I believe they're painting. Not that I've been over there to check it out.
Painting's done.
It is done. Okay. So it's moving along. There have been some change orders, which is to be expected when you have a building as old as I am, and you find things out there that are unanticipated. Our aircraft dismantler, they have a draft agreement. I'll be bothering them again to see if they want to move forward on that or not. Our next airport partners meeting is going to be July 26th at 9 a.m. out at the airport. That's Friday. We have gotten a cost estimate for a stormwater plan for the airport, which is about $15,500. We'll be moving forward on that, and then we're going to move forward on replacing the 15 kV regulator, which again is, I believe, a $15,500 dollar dynamic. We might have found a part that we can utilize. We'll look into that, but again, hopefully in the next month or two. Taxiway Delta will have lights again. And on the, well, I'll jump into this dynamic. Funded projects per the city budget this fiscal year. The 3 airport roads, which is a grant which was just mentioned. The master plan for $439,000. These are rough numbers. The 1,800 acre environmental assessment for $60,000. The 16 acre cleanup for a site that's out there, that's $360,000. For a grant, well, $360,000, we think we can get a grant, but we need to verify that because would be through ADQ, and if that comes off, then hopefully we'll be going back to that trough over and over again. The thought is that it's a pretty decent grant coverage there. Runway 321, again, that's $2.3 million. The hangar gate, and that would be our local funds, $25,000. Sealing up a western taxi lane, which is down towards Cassie and Mr. Gaines' business, $20,000 for that, and that's a temporary fix, not a long-term fix. Revitalizing the Sedgman Circle, leaving the oil can airplane out there, but basically cleaning all the rest of that up. Shock Center, removing that building, which is $30K. A used backhoe. We had a couple that we thought we could utilize, but they've been rode hard and put away wet, so we're going to have to go with a used backhoe. And then signage improvements for $10,000. Hangar occupancy out at the airport. Right now, there are 39 that are occupied, 5 that are vacant. Covered tie downs, which we talked about, they're full. The waiting list, 2 for the executive hangars, 1 for T hangars at this point, and 5 for the covered tie downs. Ongoing leasing, the 5 acres, we've not advertised it yet. I think this website is going to play into that. Plus, I need to contact an outfit in Seattle that does national real estate dynamics in regards to hangars, and get that moving. Security update, no issues that I'm aware of at this point. We're continuing with the environmental assessment for the 1,800 acres. You'll all note that one of the trailers at the airport disappeared last week. The Z&H trailer, excuse me, which was to the north of, to the north of the airport administration building. Fire department is going to utilize that for a building project they've got going. So it's gone. So we just have the one left, the TSA trailer, and I'll be harassing them probably within minutes, if not hours, to get that thing off the airport.
It is paid for, though.
Yes, it is. Yes, the check's cleared, it is paid for. But if it stays there much longer, they're going to get to pay rent, which I think will be another motivator for them to get it off the airport. The military fighter flight safety meeting at the EAA hangar that we had on June 20th was a success, very well attended, lots of back and forth. Airspace gentleman from Nellis was there. Makes you not want to fly anywhere near the north part of Las Vegas. It's just, there's a lot going on up there. And that's all I have for my report at this time. Any questions?
I have a couple questions for you. There's been rumor regarding budget and the new shade hanger project. Could you give us clarification as to what became of that, or what?
It did not make the cut this year. The dynamic, when I presented it 2 or 3 months ago, and these were old numbers, I think it was the $500,000 number I got from our engineer. The return on investment, the payoff, basically was either 46 or 50 years, which didn't cut the mustard. The updated number, which I think we got down to 350,000, did go forward, but again, that project for this fiscal year that started July 1st didn't make the grade. Now again, that doesn't mean that it's off the list forever, it just means it didn't make the grade for this year.
I'm sorry, maybe I'm just slow to understand this, but I did see something posted about the $350,000, but it's approved at what level and not approved at what, I'm not sure I understand how that works. So the lower price was acceptable, but it is not approved as a project. I'm just trying to get understanding.
And again, I'm not, this is my first budget process here, so I might get this wrong. I don't think so. So basically what I do is I present projects to city management. Finance is there, city manager's there, my boss Gary's there, Bennett's there, other people in the department that Gary's responsible for, economic development, planning. We present our projects. Then I believe the city manager meets with the finance director. They go through that listing, and projects can fall out. And then I believe it also goes to the city council at some point where they can look at the projects and projects can fall out. So somewhere between when I made my presentation a few months ago and when the budget was approved, that project for this year fell out. Now, that doesn't mean the project won't ever come to be. That just means it didn't make the grade, didn't get an appropriation number for this year.
So there's some sort of a pending project list that persists into possibly next year to be re-evaluated again next year?
No,
or how does this
it's no
work?
different than, and I don't know that I've done, in fact, I haven't done a revised ACIP project list for you. Again, this would be grant funded, the hangar's not, or the Shadeport's not. But these project lists, the fact that projects might move or they don't make it for a fiscal year, they're still on the list. They don't go away. The fact that they're not approved in a given year doesn't mean that they evaporate. It just means they didn't make it for that year. So again, it will come up again in the next budget cycle. And I'm assuming by that time, the numbers that were generated, the 350,000, will probably be fine-tuned. And I'm assuming, again, it's an assumption that that number will shrink, which again will make a difference in regards to the amount of time it will take based on the rentals that we're charging and the cost of the project for when it pencils out.
Okay.
But the fact that a project, it's no different than the ACIP, which I'll speak to here in a little bit. That project list has doubled, if not tripled, from last year. And that's talking to people, that's getting into more detail. And the local projects, it's no different. Once something's on a list, it's on the list, then it's just a matter of each fiscal year, what our priority is going to be for that year, and where do we want to spend money. So it doesn't mean that the fact a project doesn't get funded in a given year doesn't mean that it falls off the list.
Okay. And related to the budget question, was the $70,000 for a new SUV approved on the current budget?
It was not. It is going to be a minivan, and I believe the dollar amount was knocked down to $55,000.
On the subject of shade hangers existing, which are full and there's a waiting list,
Yes.
it's brought to my attention that, and this is a policy question, that there is one shade hanger that is being rented by somebody without an aircraft, and it did not sound as if they have intentions of occupying it with an aircraft. And just as it's been brought up in the past, but it seems like counter to the purpose of having the shade hangers, especially when we're not getting new ones anytime soon, that they should be used for aircraft.
And your concern is a valid one per FAA, based on the hangar kerfuffle that they had down at Glendale, where Mr. Husband now is ensconced. Should a non-aviation use be allowed, one, you'd have to have your own policy. Two, you charge a rate for a like storage of a non-aviation entity for that piece. So I guess the question would be for us, and I think I know the answer to the question before I ask it. If you have a storage space and you can't get an airplane in there, or airplane parts, or what have you, do we want to allow non-aviation use? One, and that would be a question for you all's policy. Two, if we do that, FAA would require that we charge a market rate for non-aviation use with a 30-day notice that these people can be kicked out if there's somebody that has airplane parts or what have you that wants to be there. Fullerton does this. And I gather that there are a lot of classic auto people in Fullerton and not as many airplane people, so they can lease their hangars out with FAA concurrence, but the bottom line is they have to pay a fair market value that you would off the airport, and typically that's 2 or 3 times the amount of money.
Okay,
With
yeah.
a dynamic that whoever has the non-aviation use, if there's somebody that shows up with an airplane, they get 30 days notice, they get kicked out, and the airplane has preference.
Okay, yeah, because I think my understanding of this boils down to a non-use versus somebody waiting on a list to use it as
Yeah.
for the intended purposes. And it's been an ongoing thing for many years since I moved there, that there's been a system of people trying to maintain control of those spaces outside of airport management, and even to some effect subleasing them, if you will. And I just have a concern that somebody is holding a space for something they don't have for its intended purpose, so.
And actually, we need to have this is new to me, so thank you very much. It's the first I've heard of it. I'm not surprised, but I'm sort of surprised. Yeah, we need to talk because I agree that subleases and that whole dynamic of trying to maintain control, that's not a fair and open system for all the other aviation users and aircraft folks that are
Agreed.
out there.
One last question regarding the budget. Are there monies approved to support an aviation event in the current budget?
I need to research that. I believe there are, but that's one of the things I need to go back and look at the list. There are line items, and then there are sub line items. And so I believe that is the case. I need to verify that. And I will try to get an answer for you sometime today, tomorrow at the latest.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just want to get it on record, and basically this is an opinion, but I wanted the staff to know that, in my opinion, being in aviation and all aspects of aviation in my past, that there's a lot more long-term ramifications of having services for pilots and mechanics and so forth than just looking at a budget matter. And, in the past, I've made decisions to go to an airport just because of the services they provided to the crew, and therefore spent a lot of money on fuel and so forth, and all our captains were that way, and even as an airline owner at one time, we made those decisions on the services. So I don't think you can just look at something and pencil it and say, well, it takes too long to get a payback, because there's paybacks you're not going to see.
Right.
That
No,
won't be
and
obvious.
And I agree. I've seen what you've mentioned in all of the other places I've been. And you're right. There's another, I'll call it an intrinsic part to this equation that doesn't fit an accounting sheet, no doubt.
Thank you.
I also have a question regarding the budget that maybe you can shed some light on for me. And it has to do with the shade hanger project that this commission sent up through you to the budget process. Now, I understand that the city manager and finance manager, their duties are to come up with a reasonable budget to present to city council. It's also my understanding that this commission serves on the behalf of the city council members. I'm not convinced that our project made it to the council members. I believe, or I'm left to believe, because I've got no other response, that it never got to the city council members for them to decide whether or not it was a viable project and a direction they wanted to go. Could you tell me if our project in its entirety as submitted was reviewed by the city council of a whole?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your honesty. Sure.
The answer is no.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Staley. And that was my concern. And so I think the council needs to work with the city administrators and fix that. Because this commission gives up a lot of their personal time. The subcommittee on that project went out, we spent hundreds of hours getting bids and researching the need and coming up with that need. We met with contractors to get preliminary bids. They weren't final. And we fully intended for our unanimous project to get placed before the city council. So I would hope the city council would take objection to how this went down and understand that how much it deflates our enthusiasm as a commission, because we want to see the airport thrive. I think we're all users of some portion of the airport, and the community can benefit from it greatly. So in the future, please help the commission make sure that our projects do make it to the city council. That's all.
Points are very well taken. We had the workshop Saturday.
And I apologize, I couldn't be there.
And that, believe me, that issue is in spades.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just that issue, it's the whole process. I sat down with Steve and Gary one day, said, okay, here's the city hierarchy, here's the commission. Now, just where does it fit in on all the decisions?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's decided that. There's the issue. I've been assured by the mayor, they want a workshop with this commission in the fall, where we'll finalize all that, but things will be worked on between now and then. I think the biggest problem with the shade project was it was not presented as a package as to what it accomplishes. The intangibles that you talk about are not in there. What you get is for this many dollars, and we have to do a better job with that. And that's working with staff to make that happen.
Okay, thank you. I understand that. But if our subcommittee's report to the commission that they voted on, if that report had been forwarded to the council members, they would have had a full picture of the project. And I fear that did not occur. So that's one of the things we'll have to work on.
Yes, that's a process that we definitely have to work on. And I've been assured by Gary and Ron, this is all gonna get worked out.
Yeah, I'd like to, go ahead.
This has been an ongoing problem with all the commissions. How do we make sure that the information gets put on an agenda and follows through? I would recommend that after your subcommittee meets and you vote on it, that the commission itself gives direction to staff to send out an email to the city manager and to the council, and with the question, what is the next step? How do we move it up? So I think that when you have an item like this, to make sure that you specifically say this has to go to the city council, it has to go to the manager, and this is what we expect, and how do we make that happen? So I think we're missing that middle conversation of what is the next step, where do we go in this commission until we get better about this. We'll just sort of have to push that.
All right.
But
Thank you very much.
I understand your frustration.
I'm not one for policy, but in this case, I believe a written sheet with a flow diagram laying out it exactly positions, it's a done deal. You put it in the book and everybody knows where it goes, how it ends up. Number two, this commission deals with the separate off-balance book items, which are different, and I think City Hall is having a hard time comprehending that, and that's one of them that a flow diagram and us talking to them will alleviate, so this kind of stuff doesn't happen again. That's my 2 cents.
Well, if you remember when Tina Moline came out and talked to us at our first meeting, the question came up, what happens if we want to do something or need to do something between the budget periods? Well, as long as we have the reserves that finance says we need to have, we can spend the money. So I would go a little further even than what Steve's saying. If we can repackage this and show the need and the intangibles and so on, I don't see any reason why it can't go up there now, because we've gotten another, we got $300,000 in land sale money. We have a $300,000 in extra FAA money coming when we get our first grant paid. So there's, there is that route to go also. But the decision-making process definitely will get handled.
And that's why it needs to go in to let them know how our side generates unknown funds come in, and if we have a project again sitting, da-da-da-da-da, that way it can be handled without
Sure.
everyone guessing.
Ken, I know the city budget is a public document. Do you have the detailed airport budget that the commissioners can get a copy of?
I have there is a budget that you can have a copy of. I think to make it easier for you to understand, because there are a whole mess of sub items that won't, and I say this having worked for a number of cities, that are not self-evident. I need to generate something that actually shows where everything's going and all the sub-items, because otherwise you're only getting about half the information and a lot of the details in those sub-items. So I can work on generating something and get it to you.
Yeah, that would be appreciated, because we'll certainly be looking at that long-term for next year. At a previous meeting, and the issue was just raised about non-aviation use of aviation facilities. We kind of laid out a basic policy, but it didn't come back, all written up as I don't want to say legalese, but essentially that. So it can go up and get approved, whether it's something that Gary or Ron could approve, or I don't know how high it has to go for any of this stuff, quite frankly. But I think we're doing a little bit piecemeal, but that's you've got to have some marching orders as far as what you can and can't do, and the higher the better as far as things like that. So let's come back to the next commission meeting. We'll
I'll have a draft policy for you.
have that done, yeah.
Please give it to us with enough time so we can decipher it before we come together.
No, exactly, yeah, no, that's understood. Yeah, no, not 2 days before, study this.
Or the day of.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, any other questions for Steve?
Thank you very much.
Oh, certainly.
Thank you. I did attend the meeting with the FAA, and it's a complicated subject. Like most FAA meetings I've been to, you had a bureaucrat who was ready to say yes or no if you dotted the i's and crossed the t's and did all your homework, because he wasn't going to do it for you. It was made very clear to us that there's a breath of fresh air in Kingman, and there's other airports where they're going the way Kingman used to be, and they really want to work with us. So they were telling us, oh no, you don't want to do that. They're changing the rules. You'll get more money if you wait another year. There's another $500 million in supplemental coming down. They don't know whether it's going to be added onto existing applications, or they're going to go through another grant process or application process, but it's coming. They told us we've got another $300,000 coming, and we didn't know about all of that. And it's kind of, but it's the truth. You got to understand, these people are in the welfare business. The worst thing an airport could do is never apply for anything, because before long, they don't have a job anymore. So they want to help people that want to effectively use it. And when you work with them from that perspective, they go out of their way to help. And really, that's what we got. amazing. And I think we're gonna get really superior service out of that. Now, it's, you know, it gets rubber stamped in LA and Washington before the money goes out. And obviously, there's more requests than there is money. So that doesn't mean we get everything. But I think we're gonna have a real strong recommendation that comes out of the people in Phoenix.
So if I could ask about that process, who initiated and did the legwork on that to get us so many compliments?
Right there.
Thank you, Steve.
And you guys use this all the time. I asked them about I looked at the whole data sheet on the airports, and there's nothing in there about the ASOS, not even described as being there. And I said, well, what's the story on this? I mean, how do you go from an ASOS to an AWAS, and who does what? So, well, you got different agencies involved that do the work on it, different funding, and I said, well, if we wanted to go to an AWAS where we could put data out, you know, on the radio, instead of just the weather tape, what do we have to do? Don't do anything now because they're changing the rules. You're gonna get more money if you go through the next time because there's a whole new attitude, and it's kind of funny. We've had one, it used to be two, but now only one outfit that handles this stuff, and they're gouging the government. So the government's just gonna cut them off. But we could have spent the money anyway.
Could you describe ASOS and AWAS?
Oh, yeah. Both of them are continuous tape weather reporting that comes out on our special frequency at the airport. And it's only that on the ASOS, which is what we have. But the AWAS, you can put data like there's mower out on, you know, along this taxiway. The airport's closed because we just had an emergency and there's airport runway 321 is blocked. Close your dates for construction. Any of that could go out on that same tape, and it could be done at the airport office. Otherwise, you have to do a notice process, which is difficult, a little time consuming, and only certain people could do it, and he didn't even get put on the list, and nor did Joe House. So there's things that just have to happen ahead of time, or it doesn't. You can't do it. Okay. Thank you, Steve. The new business, the revised grant airport capital improvement plan. Do you?
Excuse me, we skipped step number 4.
You've really done all that, haven't you?
Not at all.
On 4A, yes?
I would like to be given the chance to.
I don't know, how do we want to handle that?
I would like to be given the chance to handle my item on my agenda, if I may. It's item number 4, old business airport website.
All right, so we didn't handle all of it with.
Not at all. I wanted him to have
all right,
this
go
to say.
ahead.
Okay, so I was placed as chair of a subcommittee regarding airport website and social media development, and Bennett gave some very valuable information. In fact, Bennett provided basically the only information I've been able to receive from anybody in the city of Kingman on this subject matter. So I really look forward to being able to work with him and the new contractors once they're selected on the website. And we have done plenty of research on this. Unfortunately, this subcommittee creation has uncovered some problems, whether they be misunderstandings or problems that need to be resolved within the city. And it really dovetails into what Mr. Burrows brought up. It almost stole some of the same exact things I wanted to say about my situation, where everybody up here volunteered to be a part of this commission to take something and put our skills, efforts, and experience and take something that's been really a mediocre facility for decades and make it into something exceptional for this community. And as with our budget process education that we've gone through now, both trying to work with the city as a volunteer, effectively, all of us are volunteering to do this. My request for information just to meet and discuss this material with the city have met with silence. I both made requests in person, by telephone, and by email to the city, and vaguely a message was passed back to me through other parties that that was not the way it's to be done. How else is a concerned citizen supposed to do something? Am I better off not being a member of this commission? I don't think that's the answer, but we have serious problems where we're doing work up here and it's not reaching the people it needs to, and we're not being engaged the way we need to be engaged by people that are paid to make the city a better place. So right now, that's where we're at. We're at a standstill on the social media stuff. Thanks to Bennett Bradley and his process, it looks like we will be able to move forward on the website with him, because that's bypassing other people in the city, it looks like. The other problem that's surfaced through this is I'm chair of a 3-member subcommittee, and it's been told to me that we are subject to the same public meeting laws. Well, the problem is that means I can't speak to anybody, any of the other 2 people on this subcommittee, without it being announced in advance. And that really cripples my ability to function in any capacity. And I guess we need to be educated more on how we're supposed to do this job we volunteered to do for the city. I feel there was inadequate direction provided in the beginning. We were advised by the city attorney that since we were in advisory capacity only, that the rules for public meeting probably shouldn't be as stringent as they may be for other committees that can actually be authorized to take action. We're simply suggesting actions to be taken, and we need help with this. We're really in a situation that it discourages volunteering to help, but that's why we're all here. So that's all I have to say on that at the moment.
I can address that part a little bit, because I talked to city attorney after the meeting, and the bottom line is, do whatever you want, but I'm just trying to keep you out of jail. I have yet to see an article where somebody in this situation went to jail, but I'm not trying to break the law. From what he said, and you gotta remember, he's talking to every other commission too, and some of them, like planning and zoning, makes some pretty, those, unless council upsets them, those are real decisions that really affect people. We got a long ways to go for our recommendations affect anybody. If we don't have a subcommittee, then there's no subcommittee meeting. But we could have a member who is going to be the point man or the source of technical information, and who he talks to, as long as there's no quorum, is not a meeting.
I'd like to address that, or just make
That's
a comment.
my way out.
Currently, on the navigation and easements, I'm the only guy on the subcommittee. So
You can talk to yourself.
Yes, I can talk to myself. Well, but maybe that's to your point, that you put one guy on there and he can go around and talk whoever he wants. Problem is, it puts all the workload on him too. So I mean, it would have to be talked about. But,
No, just compiling it. I mean, if somebody does that anyway.
because they're going to bring it back to the commission anyhow.
Well, I ask that I be given direction on next step regarding that particular matter.
That's, I'm canceling all subcommittee meetings on the advice of the city attorney, but you can be point man on social media and take it from there. You just can't have a quorum of the commission and do something without having an agenda. The problem is, you can get together and do this, but it's gotta be posted, it's gotta be public, and it's gotta be minutes.
Right, and I don't want to waste time on this, but as a practical matter, that's a problem for.
It's not gonna happen.
For 2 people to speak about something is a problem. So
Absolutely.
do we wish, are we looking at dissolving the subcommittee, or is that up to me to just treat that as needed? I'm just trying to figure out what my
Can we
direction
talk to
is.
Cooper and confirm a single-person subcommittee would be workable?
Well, I would I would use a different term because I suspect the way it's written in the state law, commission and subcommittees are specifically stated. So, one way you do that is you don't call it a subcommittee.
If I may offer this, why don't I talk to the city lawyer and get together with you, Tim, as well, and then ask him specific questions of which you're dancing around right now. What do you call this? Is it just the quorum issue to where you have a little more freedom to get things done?
Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
I said to him, a lot of what we do is gather technical information and compile that and give that to city staff. You're not supposed to do that. You're a policy organization. Staff's supposed to do all of the technical stuff. You see the problem.
Okay, if I may.
We gotta talk to a judge.
Yeah, well, okay, now that put me on the spotlight. All right. I've been involved in city government for my entire career, and I've been on many commissions and the such. Subcommittees for a commission like this are invaluable. We have to have them. So we have to determine how to work within the rules, the meeting laws, to accomplish that. Now, we can get clarification from our city attorney. However, I think you mentioned it, the question becomes if the committee meets together and they consist of a majority of the commission, then it needs to be agendized in public notice and that sort of thing, which our improvement subcommittee did. We were able to work under that. We came together with an agenda, with an advertised meeting, and we were able to assign each of the members to go out and do certain work and then come back together in an agendized meeting. Now, if we have a smaller project that maybe those types of meetings are not beneficial, then perhaps our subcommittee needs to be two, and then they can work it out. But we have to have subcommittees. That's
Just
the whole point.
so I understand right, you're talking about a subcommittee that was composed exclusively of commission members? Or no?
That issue never came up.
Okay.
Not necessarily, but other laypersons not on the commission would not affect the
Correct.
The percentage of commission members at that meeting.
Gary Kellogg's opinion was if it's technical rather than a policy recommendation, it doesn't apply anyway. And
Okay.
that's back to the city attorney saying we're a policy group, talking about technical, doesn't apply. So I think Steve's got the best answer. Let's get a little more clarity out of the city attorney, if he can do it.
As long as that doesn't come back with a recommendation of don't have subcommittees, that doesn't make sense to me. And that's what we heard, so.
Another question would be, if we have the commission, then a majority would have to be, 4 out of whatever we've got. If our subcommittees are less than that, there's no way it's a majority on the commission. So extrapolating it out, we could have up to 3 members without a policy problem, because everything they have to bring has to come back before the full commission. So, I mean, we could argue it from that standpoint of making sense, and so maybe we could talk to them that way.
And I agree 100% with
I
that.
do too. Okay, we'll move on. Did you cover? Say again? Sure.
Literally everybody, I'm sorry, you don't know me, but Paul Gaines, I own a business at the airport, and I'm on this subcommittee that Tim is on regarding social network and Facebook. I would consider Tim and myself, as well as Michael Finnegan, to be experts in aviation, experts in this airport, and wouldn't call us quite experts in Facebook or social network, but we're close enough.
Closer than Carl.
Yeah, Tim and I hang out a lot, an awful lot. We've got projects going on with the Airfest. We've got projects going on with this museum we're doing now. we're almost inseparable, and we don't like it, but that's just the way that it is. And we are doing an awful lot, and occasionally we talk about social network and what we need to do, and I thought we'd be in violation if more than one commission member or committee member was there, which I guess we're saying we're not now, so that's good. That answers that question. The main question, though, is we've also discussed how we feel that this, if we do social networking with the airport, it needs to be possibly, if we can work with the city somehow, to have it be a separate page. It doesn't look like all the other committee pages, or I think now the city was talking about lumping all their Facebook pages into just the city Facebook page. I've heard this from a few reliable sources, and not having them be separate because they're tired of managing it. It really would be nice, because the way the airport is, being a separate entity, and aviation, and not looking like any other commission that has events, and there's transportation. There's people like us that are on the committee that fly in and out of there all the time, and we know how to promote things. And we are really missing, and I said this every single meeting that I talk about, we are really missing the boat if we don't have our act together on social networking in this moment of opportunity with getting the airport back and Airfest coming up, our museum is coming up, we've got our own Facebook pages on those, and we're getting a heck of a lot of reach. If I don't mind, I know we're not supposed to really talk, but Tim has some data on that regarding one post that we made for the Airfest 1 week ago without any boosting, which you guys may not know what that means, or at any financial effort. What was the reach on that, the final reach of that one post?
I believe it's somewhere over 56,000 people now.
One post had over 150 shares, I think, not boosted, 56,000 people. Things like this trailer that we had a hard time kind of selling, it's still not there yet. With a Facebook page that's active like that, we can say, put a picture up, and it literally takes you 1 minute to put a post up and reach potentially this many people to make things kind of happen quickly, and to keep the airport in people's minds of where to come to, where to fly, where to hang out. We had a helicopter visit us yesterday, a brand new Bell 505, and we spoke to the really nice dudes from California, and they were really impressed with the airport and the cafe and all that. And I was thinking back in my mind, I'd love to tell them to check us out on Facebook and follow what's going on with the Facebook page. That would have been a prime opportunity, because they want to come back. They love the C-123. That guy may make an offer on the C-123 out there, by the way. That's his favorite aircraft. This kind of, like Tim and I said, we're the welcoming committee all the time on weekends out there, just interacting with people, but we don't really have any kind of social network stuff. And I know that Steve is not into that. That's okay, but we need to have some latitude or some provision or some mechanism to allow us a little bit of freedom to make this happen without going right down with all the exact regulations the city has, because it's stifling.
I have a question, and I'd like to direct it at Councilwoman Staley. Does the city have someone that knows the importance of the Facebook, the social media types, that is a point person that even the city council has to deal with? When you have issues of what's going on, to get it out, do you have a direct contact, or how is it handled just from the city council end? Because that's one of the policy items that matters.
So the city does employ a public relations person, but as a council member, I do not have direct access to staff. So if a council member has concern, we go through the city manager with our concern, and then he would direct the public relations person. However, when it comes to Facebook and city matters, I have my own public council Facebook page that I run myself, so that I can get that information out.
Okay, so you do have your own page that you're able to,
There is a workaround.
Yes.
So you do not have to go through city IT to manage that?
No, it's my own, I own it, and in 16 months I will shut it down.
I understand the points, but now put yourself in the city manager's position. How many people are you gonna allow to post who knows what, saying what about whom on a city site?
That can be controlled.
Well,
Okay, there's the problem, and the solution is how do you control it in such a way
we know.
that it's gonna work. Okay,
Well-
that you need to work with Bennett and sell that,
The-
that process.
Carl,
and get
the
approved.
problem is that we followed the recommendations presented by Bennett and Gary Kellogg, and we were totally ignored.
So we,
I believe Tim reached out to, we had this conversation, reached out to who was the person that the public relations person.
Yes, they're head of public information and communications, and I have not received any communications back from them. That's who I was directed to contact at a previous meeting here.
Can,
What I would, go ahead.
can you remind me, did you guys take a vote to start a Facebook page? You took an official vote on that?
No, the vote was to establish the subcommittee to help create that.
Okay.
And Gary Kellogg and Bennett Bratley were here,
Yeah, I
and I was directed to walk down the hall to contact the appropriate party, which Mr. Finnegan and I did that immediately after the conclusion of a commission meeting. I then followed up with a phone call, voicemail, and also an email stating who I was and my purposes, and I was never contacted by anybody from the city staff or from the office here.
I am really disappointed to hear that, and I will talk to you after this meeting. We'll just jump over that, and
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I was
It's all the
told,
comment. I at least have a question.
I was told by Gary Kellogg that, you know, he pursued this, and it turns out there is nobody except the tourist person in the city, and I'm not sure that they have that authority. So, we've got a big void of outer space there.
Yeah.
And maybe the users group should have the face page and not call it Kingman City. I don't.
Like, on our own, just things are getting promoted that way through 3 other Facebook pages, but we're hoping we'd have a little bit of support or a little bit of a leash, and they can monitor it and make sure we're doing okay to let us and see how it goes. That's more officially tied to the city, like the official, not a museum site or not the Airfest site or something else, but something that looked like it was without being directly tied to all the other commission, or excuse me, all the other commission sites and that kind of stuff.
so this sounds like,
Obviously, with that kind of result from the stuff that you've been putting out, tourism is missing a boat.
well, city policy needs to establish someone that will take on this type of media. It's not an option anymore. You have to do it. I mean, that's what it gets down to. So Mr. Foggins will probably have to visit this item.
Real quick, I guess we just need to know, we're having this debate here amongst ourselves, but the people we need to be talking to are not here. And we've requested contact with these people. How do we get the proper people, whether it be the city manager or the public information officer, to engage us with a discussion? They can just explain to us the way it needs to be. But we've been shut out right now, and it's hard to fix something if we can't even have the conversation. We can all agree to agree in this room, but that doesn't help solve it.
This month, Steve and I will be reporting to the city council, and I will bring that issue up. And I have to tell you one other thing. I was discussing the agenda with Gary Kellogg, and he says, no, we've never had a commission that reported to the city council before. And I'm not sure that the city staff wants that.
I'm sure the city staff does not want that, but that's what commissions are for.
We're on the agenda. Mr. Foggins said we are on the agenda, and the mayor said, talk to him, and he did it. So it's gonna happen, but, please understand, we're really rocking the boat here in a lot of different ways in terms of process. And government is really big on process.
I understand what you're saying, but if we're rocking the boat is because the boat is not stable.
It needs to be rocked.
So when is the meeting that you're going to be addressing this at council?
Is it the 16th? 16th, yeah.
Okay,
And I would like, that's later on in my notes, I would like all of you to be there, because I expect some interaction. This is a report, this is not a call to the public. And Steve's gonna have Joe's 2-page list with a couple, 3 lines of the status of all of this, the council will get ahead of time, so they can ask questions on all of that, but he doesn't have to read it all. And we're gonna talk more big picture, I am anyway, rather than sweeping the street. And I'm sure there's gonna be some questions from council, and I would like you guys to be there.
So in order to resolve this, am I to understand that Jamie or another council member need to be contacted if we're having issues with staff? That's the way that's the pipeline? Okay.
Well, and now, maybe Bennett's in a position to do something where before he was not. I don't know that. But you'll find that out when you talk to him.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to add something to this. It may be a little thing, but I found that it kind of inhibits our ability to talk to people when they don't give you any credibility and you tell them, well, okay, this is who I am, but I think a simple thing like a business card or an ID badge would make it a lot easier to get information.
I brought that up with Gary, because I went down with the FAA meeting, they asked for my card. And we've had a little bit of a discussion about it. The city doesn't want to buy cards for every single commissioner, and I understand all that kind of stuff. If you buy it ourselves, but does it have the official city logo? Maybe we need a card that just says commission on it, and we could write our name and pass it out. But some official contact with these people for this body, an ID I think would be, we don't need a badge, but an idea would be appropriate, and Gary's gonna check on that.
Or even just give us ability to make our own cards using the city logo.
Yeah, or even, well, without, you can, of course. Okay,
I'm sorry, I need to comment on that too. There's no doubt we could get cards for each commissioner for $5. Is this commission not worth $40 to the city? Really? Yes, I do. I am serious. $40?
A card may help or whatever. It's gonna be, again, your term should probably be stated on there from this to this or something, just so everyone kind of knows that
there's,
short-term card or something. I mean, that's just my viewpoint, if they're gonna be handing out cards or whatever.
And that's fine.
it's a legitimate question.
But for $40, it kind of makes you wonder how they value us.
Yeah, I agree.
If I could, this commission should have some budget money, is that right?
Sure.
You have a budget, you put this on an agenda to buy business cards and approve it and make it so. You should do that.
Yeah, we are. We put
Well,
that on
first of
next
all,
month's
I'm not sure we knew we had a budget.
Well, we have an airport budget.
No,
There
she's
must
talking
be
about a commission budget.
Most commissions have a small budget.
I don't think there's a budget for the commission. I will verify that, but I don't recall that.
Okay. A lot of, I used to be on historic preservation. They had several $1,000s every year that they used. And so if you don't have that, then that's another thing that we might want to work out is how do we get that on your agenda, you approve it, and then we push that on to the council that you need to have a small budget every year.
All right, thank you very much. Steve, did you cover the ACIP adequately, or do you?
I would just say, look at your handout. You'll note the total, and again, it goes out into, if I recall correctly, it's something on the order of 25 or 26 years.
Yeah.
But there are a number of projects that are not on this, which are grant eligible, and that is crack sealing, seal coating for different areas, remarking, mill and fill for the crosswind runway, rebuilding of the center ramp, the Straube ramp, the west ramp, and again, haven't even gotten into any kind of guesstimates in regards to new taxi lanes, taxiways, or ramps on the east side of the airport for that whole area that's not opened up yet. So this is a very conservative number, believe it or not. And again, these are just grant funded. These are not local projects. And that's one of the things that FAA now requires, not that they've played hardball with us yet, and that is, based on a number of rural airports in the western region who would get grants, they wouldn't spend any of their own local money on any improvements. In other words, if you had a paving project, they wouldn't seal coat it, they wouldn't do other things, and so the pavement, when it went bad, would go bad to the point where it's a rebuild, so you're talking 8 or 10 times the cost. So one of the things now, one of the warnings they've given us 2 years ago was, if we ask you, we want to see that you've spent some of your own money on projects. Now, this last year, we're golden, because I think we spent $70,000, $60,000 both on crack sealing for the runway and remarking. So we're good. There are other airport sponsors that don't do that. Hence, the FAA basically saying, if you want these 100% or 95% grants, you got to pony up and you got to show that you're getting as long a lifespan out of the improvement we build for you as you can get. So that's another aspect. But this is just grant projects. Haven't even gotten into the whole local dynamic. And we're not even, and this is all airside, we're not even talking about any of the industrial park projects in this yet. So this is just a sort of off the cuff, here's a little bit of it. I think what you'll see here is that number will at least double, if not triple. And as we put things together, then it's going to be a matter of what our priorities are going to be, and what the FAA's priorities are. In other words, where are we likely to get the most money the quickest, most free money? Use somebody else's tax base, not our own, to basically make our improvements.
Okay, 5B, the airport accomplishments. Now, this is kind of a pre-run to what you're going to.
Well, as you can see, it's a list that will choke a horse. I mean, there's a lot that's been done. It doesn't seem like it, but I can tell you, given the process, even simple things like getting rid of a trailer, you'd think, oh, it's easy. Well, not so much. But yeah, this gives you an idea. I'm not going to read through this because it'll put you all to sleep, and that's not nice. But just a number of different things we've managed to do in just 11 months, which, when you think about it, it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, that's right.
From a we don't run airports, we don't understand airports, to all of this getting done. And again, there are a whole lot of other items that we have yet to accomplish. Foundation documents, like minimum rules and regs, which I think there's a set of documents out there, but it's not come back to you all for a review and an upgrade. Some of the things that you all were speaking about earlier in regards to policy and the shade port. I think with the shade port, unlike all the hangars, there's never been a 3% increase per year. And I'm not saying we should do that, but I'm also saying that, okay, if we're going to have a policy and it's going to apply to the shades, it's going to apply to the tie downs, and it's going to apply to the buildings, or how do you want to deal with it? And then the policy of aviation, non-aviation use, and managing that. Managing the tie downs, which I think we can do a better job of, and the agreements, of which we've started to do, some of the long-term land leases, some of the hangar agreements, the shade port agreements, tie downs, non-aviation short-term use agreements and policies. There's still a whole lot of different things we need to do.
Yes.
But nonetheless, for a startup dynamic of here you go, and again, I'm new, so I could be wrong about this. I don't get a sense that this was planned 2 or 3 years ago, that this came up, it was dealt with, and boom, the airport is back to city management.
First
So-
airport, users group meeting, Joe started writing. That's where it came from.
Yeah, yeah. So, given the time frame and the turnover in staff and everything, this is really kind of world-class.
Okay? Thank you. We'll get some of these policies for the commission and send them up and talk to Gary on how it's gonna get packaged, or what level of approval needs to be done. There are, correct me if I'm wrong, there's 6 approvals necessary in the grant process for a grant. And the KAA only went to the council for the final contract. They, because they were the official operator of the airport, they could do the rest of it themselves. So that is in the process of being worked out, or is it finished as to?
A policy has been, a draft policy has gone to Gary and to our finance director. There are 11 different steps. As you alluded to, when the authority ran the airport, they would go to city council once, and then council wouldn't see it. Different airport sponsors handle this differently. When I was at Arlington, Washington, the first grant that they'd done in a long time, we went back to council 8 times. Needless to say, every time they'd see me, they'd run screaming for the hills because, oh no, I don't want to hear airport again, because we were doing that. At Lake Havasu, I think we went on average for a federal grant, ADOT grant, 3 times from beginning to end. And what I've proposed here is again 3 times. And in other words, for most projects, it would probably be twice, but no more than 3 times to city council, and typically tied to contractual documents.
Would the first time be when it's in the budget for participating revenue, for instance?
No, actually, the first time that I have here would be when we do a consultant selection like we did for the master planning consultants last year. The next one I've got here would be when we select the consultant, and that would go, and again, on most of these, they're coming back to you anyway. The dynamic here is I didn't want to burden the council with an increased workload. The next one would be construction management contract. So in other words, with the runway, when we get to the point where we decide we're going to start upfronting the engineering costs, that agreement would come to the city council for their approval. Then bid award. Now again, the engineer is going to put all this stuff together. We're going to go out to bid. We get the best, lowest, reasonable bid. At that point, that would come to the city council, and we would probably also put in with that acceptance of the FAA grant when it's offered. But the key being, we wouldn't accept it carte blanche up front. It's with conditions, and then city manager or the mayor, whoever can sign it, because when the FAA offers you the grant, depending on how bollocksed up their system is, I've heard some airports, they're given 2 days' notice where they have to accept the grant, and you can't do a city council meeting in 2 days. In some cases, 7 days. In most cases, 2 weeks. So again, that preloading is key to this, to where the system can work and you're not burdening the city council or city management in a horrendous way. But no, I've drafted something up. I've not gotten any negatives. In fact, more of a surprise, oh, we thought we'd just go once, and just sort of, no. FAA is very participatory in this process, probably the most participatory federal agency I can think of, where they want to have a hand and they actually want to review all these steps. And that's not to say that I only bring things to the airport board 3 times. No, you will, actually, guys, you're doubled. It's like 6 or maybe 8 times that things are coming to you through the process.
Thank you. Wes? navigation easements.
So I did a PowerPoint, looked like, so, they're a red pointer. Anyone know?
While he's working on that, I want to cover some stuff from the work session.
Okay,
You ready?
I got it.
Okay.
I had questions on exactly what navigation easement has been up here. That's the definition by some law firm, so I grabbed it. Started off in 2005. As we talked about it beforehand, Richard Holstrom was the one who really and I initiated it, but he did the majority of the legwork. And it was the airfield committee here at Kingman. We started out with questions up to the AOPA on incorporating easements because we figured they'd have purvey of the rest of the United States. And their reply really was that it was basically state to state and even a little bit different in the states going down to the local level, but the states dictated more than anything else. So he went down and physically went over to Prescott, I know, and talked to the manager over there and spent some time. And I think in Flagstaff, he went to the city and talked to one of the people there. So we obtained their easements, and then Riley went and talked to Mojave County Planning and Zoning, as most of the airport falls within the county. So the groups listed were contacted down there. I called it the height of insanity. Off the end of 2-1, you've got Statesboro, a housing group, and they went and got it approved by the Mojave County supervisors, putting a school right off the end. I say the FAA opposed it. Tony Garcia actually have a letter from him opposing it, but at the same time, another division of the FAA, where you dictate the height from the runway that you are, said, okay, if you meet these guidelines, it's okay, which is a height restriction, which is standard when you're looking at any of that. Statesboro is still active. After a 8-year period, they had to reapply, and the county gave it to them that, yeah, you can let it sit there and we'll still be on that. So this should be coming up. I don't know the exact dates, but that's something I would think we should try hard to get rid of and utilize the city to help the airport out. One thing that should be mentioned is everyone knows that Bullhead is still owned by the county. The other two airports, Kingman and Havasu, are owned by the cities. Bullhead is still county owned. I think at some point the county should give it to the city so it's not county holding out one against the other. That's general opinion by me. 7 to 16. They appeared twice as agenda items and staff to follow up and report. In the same time frame, I attended Santa Monica presented at Copper State. One of the local pilots gave probably about a 45-minute presentation and then Q&A or whatever, and I went and talked to him, and he knew what he was doing, but evidently the way the legal system works didn't quite work the way he was hoping. 2017, we came again and put navigation easements on at an airfield meeting, and we actually scheduled a meeting in September with P&Z, Rich Ruggles, and he had attended a meeting down in Mesa, and they talked about, they had overlays at Falcon and Gateway. So he had presented a little bit different format from what we had been looking at. Well, as you know, 2017 was the start of the transition, and the board and staff didn't want to do anything, so it was cover your behind in full force, so that's it, just kind of stopped. It's 2019, the way I look at it, it's time to end the creep, and who we have to get involved is Steve, Economic Development, Airport Commission, FAA Phoenix, and again, that's the airports division. They'll be involved no matter what we do. But Mojave County Planning and Zoning, the City of Kingman, both the city attorney and planning and zoning are going to be involved. The city's planning and zoning is at the end, off the end of 3, where we bump into a little bit of city land, but the majority is county. Additionally, I wrote more money, but that remains to be determined how much that exactly is, depending upon the routes taken. So what I propose next is an in-house meeting with Steve, Planning and Zoning, the attorney, Economic Development, Bennett, and the subcommittee, or whoever else wants. Set up some timelines and bring it back to you guys, the commission. The reason I took this shot that you see here, that's Santa Monica Airport there. That's the shortened runways that they're operating. They're down to 3,500 feet. So essentially your jets that they were operating out of there are gone. It was short for the jets anyhow. This picture here was, I shot it taking off out of Santa Monica one evening. We turned to the left, we're heading towards LAX, and I just shot the picture taken off out of Santa Monica, so I figured it kind of tied in. Question?
I have a question. So as it stands right now with the county, there's an approved school project that they may or may not exercise in the future that's on the approach to runway 21 at Kingman Airport?
Yes.
It's a
It
bad
was a
idea.
group, it was a Statesboro group out of Vegas.
Can the effort through establishing the navigation easements reverse that?
No. But you would tie in with the easements. They're gonna time out here shortly. They haven't begun the project. If you don't begin it at a certain time, your time frame for that runs to a set, and if you don't do it, well, they re-upped it. They redid it. Well, it's coming up here again, and now it's been X amount of time, and I hopefully we have a different, when you look at it, board of supervisors down there than what we had then. So hopefully you can bring some rationale to them.
Do they have to go before the Board of Supervisors again to extend?
Yes.
Well, we need to know when that comes up, because that needs to be changed. That's
Yes.
a horrible idea.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm sure I can get the original and then look and we can
Okay.
extrapolate.
If they approve the school site, school could still be built, but you could put height limitations if you come in later, and the noise issue on an navigation easement, then they're forced to insulate instead of the airport paying for it. So a lot of things can be done that would predate the building, but help protect the airport, but not subdivision.
Yeah, the school was, basically was a bribe. At first, there was no school in there, and then they decided they needed additional horsepower, so once they gave them some land to build a school, oh, this is good, and so it twists how some.
Possible the school district could withdraw their approval.
Yeah, I think this is the first I've heard of it today. And while I don't intend to crash an airplane on the approach to 2-1, I would hate to create a situation that obviously would go from an aircraft accident or incident into a total disaster with many lives lost. And we need to know how to oppose that and at least educate and express that situation. I've seen a similar concern with Nellis Air Force Base when I lived in Las Vegas, and people still made a poor choice there in that situation. But
And again, we have different supervisors. At the time, I believe this happened, we were faced with the 3, and so it changed, it's changed. So I believe that now's a good time to do it.
Another factor is access to 66. I believe things were growing so fast that they thought that would be sooner we get all the navigation easements on, that it may not be totally effective on that particular site, but all the rest of the land out could be. And one of the problems we have with it, and the current noise contours are all on the airport. But if you're looking for this grow to 200,000 people in this valley, what do the noise contours look like there? And that's really the problem. And that, the master plan people said they would do that for us, so we could use that as the basis for the navigation easement.
When you look at it, Rich was talking about an overlay down in Mesa, which is different from what they did in Prescott and Flag. It's hard, it's on your title, it's a done deal. So it gives you much, and that's something the committee and commission will look at. But for our angle, from my angle, so we want the most legal, and they have really tight ones in Flag and Prescott, so they're good.
Can you make a copy of the recommendation for this group that needs to start the process for Steve?
Yeah, did you get copies of all the stuff, like folders of the stuff, or I can't remember if you just looked at them or you got copies.
We talked about it, but I don't recall.
Okay, I'll get the data for them, no problem.
Okay, any other questions, Scott?
No.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Okay, the work session we had on Saturday. A while back, the city hired a company to do a statistically accurate survey of what people in the city want. And rather detailed, and they put all that together, presented it to the council. The council put it in as policy and got the sheets of all that information. It's 134 pages. That's not quite that, but it essentially, it is, if you're a commission, you want to fit what you do into accomplishing these goals. You're logical and rational. Amazingly, we can easily help on the vast majority of them, even though we're way out in the sticks. There were a few things that related to downtown only, but in terms of the airport contributing to what the city wants, and we're talking political desires here now, all the political stuff. We really can shine. So this needs to, maybe I should have done this and brought it in at this meeting, but I will at the next. We'll approve this as essentially our guidelines on what we're trying to do besides building an airport. I mean, obviously we have that, but a lot of things doing out there that fit what the city wants to, and that's just kind of the directions we want to go. It was a very positive meeting overall. There were some problems with some committees. I would not want to be planning and zoning where they're talking about containers and whether you could have to build a sewer system, attach the sewer system to add a room. They get 30 people down there beating on the drums, and some of these commissioners are not too happy. We have not had that kind of a problem, but I don't think we will, because I think we do what the city wants. Anybody else in here? Okay. Any announcements? Anything else before I drop the hammer? Well, thank you for being here. I think it was a productive meeting. We didn't vote on anything as policy, but I think we laid out some problems we have to work to solve, and we'll do that. Thank you very much.